Yo, what's good? It's Miss Stora. So the Solasta 2 demo is officially out now for everyone to give the game a try. Now, the first game, Solasta Crown of the Magister, was a CRPG near and dear to my heart. It was a fantastic battle sim for those that enjoy Dungeons and Dragons, particularly 5th edition D&D. In general though, I'd say it's a good game for any CRPG or RPG lover in general. I could definitely recommend it for the fun combat, wealth of content including multiple long campaigns, some interesting stories in said campaigns, and full party customization. However, there were some flaws with the original game, and I say this from a place of love, but chief among them were the game's visuals. Solasta Crown of the Magister could be outright rough looking at times. Not so much in like the combat, ability, and spell effect side of things, all of that looked fine, but dang near every other aspect visually, they were okay at best when talking about things like the environment, to just kind of ugly when talking about the character model, specifically their faces, for example. But I mean, there was for sure some charm to it, and fans of the game like myself weren't too harsh about it because this kind of game is a big undertaking and it was made by a small dev team, so we were understanding. And that issue didn't stop me from recommending the game due to just how much it didn't manage to get right. The game was a bit light on some of the roleplay aspects too, like ability checks were present, but just not as common as I would have liked, and maybe there were like a few other small issues here and there. To be honest though, what Solasta got right was so well done that if they did manage to get those visuals in check, as well as a few tweaks here and there for the sequel, there isn't a whole lot that worries me about this next game being amazing as long as it has a good story. I really do trust them to knock everything else out of the park. With all that said though, the sequel is in the works and we have a demo now to show for it. The devs have made it very clear that they are extremely aware that the most common feedback surrounding the first game was regarding its visuals, and they look to address it. Early access is planned for this year and hopefully a full release next year. So, how did things look for Solasta 2 so far? Let's talk about it. When you're playing the demo, it's listed up in the top corner as pre-alpha, so bear that in mind. This isn't a beta or even a full-on alpha yet, so expect bugs, changes, and most importantly of all, improvements for what you see here in this video. Also, I kind of just jotted down all of my thoughts as I was playing through the demo, so don't expect any kind of tight format or structure to this video. I'm just gonna go down the list and talk about what I thought was worth pointing out during my time with the game. So right out the gate, I want to say that Solasta 2 looks amazing when compared to the first game, and just pretty damn good overall in its own right. You can really tell that Tactical Adventures took the first game's biggest criticism to heart, that being its visuals. Again, Solasta Crown of the Magister was a very solid and fun game, especially if you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons. It just wasn't a very pretty one, but everything here has been dramatically and drastically improved. Character models, hair, environments, inventory UI, hell, even the store UI is very pretty. Like BG3, Baldur's Gate 3 is a superior game. Don't get me wrong, but the store UI for this game, the shop UI, is honestly better with how it has you and the shopkeep in view. There's nice fades of the UI, and there's even panning to your character when you want to sell something. It just looks great, and I'd love to see something like this in BG3. It's very dope overall. Much props to whoever designed it. Spell visuals in particular did improve a bit as well, even though they were never a problem in the first game. Being someone who primarily plays casters though, this is still very nice to see nonetheless. The little slow motions, you see kind of like a little slow-mo action during opportunity attacks. That's a nice touch. Cutscenes are beautifully directed in terms of camera angles. There's nice sweeping shots, action shots, close-ups, and all. Just in general, the cutscene, the camera work in cutscenes is one of the things, at least for me, that's one of the most obvious improvements. I don't know if it's the same person that was working on that for the first game and they just got much more proficient at what they've done, at what they do at their job, or if the new engine that they're using allows them to do more with it, or if they've hired someone new for that in general. But very nice in that regard. Overall, I am very impressed with the visual improvements in pretty much every aspect the team has made when creating this sequel. Considering this is just pre-alpha, I'm surprised to already be saying that my biggest concern surrounding the sequel has been taken care of. The game is gonna look great with the demo here as proof. There's plenty of other improvements that I'm gonna talk about here in a bit as well. So if the stuff that was good about the first game stays at a similar or better quality, then I feel like they've got a hit on their hands. Job well done for sure, Tactical Adventures. Next, I want to say, in general, at least from what this demo has showed us, the voice acting seems to be much better this time around. Quite honestly, fair and another frequent complaint of the original Solasta was that the voice acting was subpar in most cases. It was understandable being that the game was an indie title after all, plus it added a bit to the game's charm, I get that. But still, here though, the voice work I heard overall was a massive improvement. Like in the original game, even your main cast of characters, your party, came across as mostly cheesy, but here they sounded pretty solid. The kobolds in particular, they were pretty damn funny. Like the voice actor for the little guy, the main kobold speaking, they had me wearing a huge smile on my face the entire time they were talking, and they got a few laughs out of me. So I really dug that part of the demo.
Mighty obsidian mistiness will eat him for a dinner. Probably calm her rage, at least for a day.
Next up, areas that were once separated by a loading screen are now not. Big improvement. While I don't expect there to be no loading screens, it seems like there may be a lot less of them, which is a good thing, as the first game did have a lot of them. Even when going from small area to small area, sometimes you'd get loading screens. Instead, when transitioning to another area in this demo, we were treated to a sweeping shot of the surrounding area as this lift you were on descended down. A welcome change for sure. For the few zone transitions there were in this demo, load times were nice and quick as opposed to the first game. Movement in general is just like a night and day difference when comparing this to the first Solasta in a good way. The game controls so much better than the first. I don't know why this is an option for all CRPGs. Like, I get it. Point and click is just the way these games go. I get that, I understand. But Solasta 2 has WASD controls and a pretty good set of controls for it at that. Like, this is the way that I'm gonna play the game once it releases. And with simple button prompts for jumping across gaps or vaulting over obstacles and intuitive, smooth camera controls with either the Q and E keys or the mouse, it makes me wish that all CRPGs had this movement scheme as an option. Don't get me wrong, this isn't revolutionary or anything. I'm not trying to say that it is. It just feels good to have here, and for sure, it works well. Even the point and click movement is much improved too. It's a lot smoother as you're not confined to a grid when exploring outside of combat, combined with better camera controls across, both WASD and point and click movement styles. It just feels really smooth to move your party around regardless of which of those styles you end up picking. This all helps the game feel more modern when, compared to, with everything else that has improved. As even when Solasta 1 first came out, the game had kind of already looked and felt a bit dated. Again, even at launch, even now on the release date, I wouldn't say the same about this sequel, to be sure. Something neat that happened in the demo was an instance, a story instance, I guess you could say roleplay instance, of being able to avoid a combat scenario with some kobolds by sneaking around and stealing some dragon scales in order to convince the kobolds that you're in the same dragon cult as they are, thus upon talking to them, making them non-hostile to you, and you can kind of just move around their area unbothered. You know, there was exploration, roleplay mechanics, persuasion, all that kind of stuff to get out of combat in the original Solasta, but nothing to the effect of what I just described to you right now, you know, like kind of combining some of those aspects together for one interaction. So it's nice to see here, and I hope there's more of it in the full game. Definitely taking more inspiration from D&D proper with that one. Great stuff overall. The new Sickless race is pretty cool looking. They're like these race of like stone people. I'm not really sure how to describe them other than that. Just think more sleeker, cooler looking versions of the thing, I guess you could say. And the story of the demo is nothing special, but it's enough to keep you interested in progressing and getting to the bottom of things. The first game's story was at least good, I would say. Although I didn't ever finish the final DLC, so you know, there's that. But I have high hopes for the story here in the sequel upon full release. Also, I'd love for that Sickless race to be playable as well. In general, Tactical Adventures did a good job implementing the stuff that's present in D&D proper into their game, but their homebrew, the stuff that's all their own creation, is also really good as well. Like the story and premise behind the Sorax from the first game was dope. I liked their homebrew subclasses, and I'd love to see some homebrew races and maybe even an entire homebrew class or two from them. Like Tactical Adventures, y'all know how to make good stuff. I'm down to see more of it in terms of your own unique stuff entered in this essentially D&D game. Combat feels pretty much the same as Solasta 1. There's some differences, but that's not a bad thing. You know, everything just kind of just looks better, which honestly is great. Solasta's one, you know, its combat was its best feature, but really it didn't need to be touched a whole lot. It was pretty complete already as a 5e battle simulator. The original game's great reaction system is still here. There's some nice quality of life additions, such as, you know, that reaction system. It now has a bigger window, so you can see several reactions at once. And having a section on the combat bar, I forget what it's called. I think it's called like extended combat actions or something like that. I think that's what it was called. But anyways, it's one little button on your combat bar with that title that essentially when you click it, it will bundle your dash, disengage, and dodge actions all in one place. So that way the, you know, combat UI is a bit less crowded. And there's also, you don't need to manually go ahead and click dash every time you want to use it. Instead, your movement areas are highlighted in different colors to show where you can go with your normal movement and where you can go with your dash movement. I think that was in the original game to an extent, maybe in different colors, or different shades, I'm not sure. But in Solasta 2, to dash, you can simply click a space in that extended area, but you have to double click to confirm that you'd like to use an action or bonus action for rogues to dash. That's honestly, just like I said, just like a little thing, but it does make combat feel a bit more fluid and smooth. Yeah, it only takes a second or two to just navigate to that dash button and click it, but just over the course of an entire run, an entire campaign over and over, that kind of stuff does add up, and it does lead to feeling, like I said, just a smoother experience. The ready action wasn't present here in this demo though, like it was in the original game, at least not that I could find anywhere. But I suspect that, you know, that's just a thing for this demo and that they are going to implement it later on for the full game. At least I hope so, as it's a part of that original game that I didn't like a lot. So I would be bummed if it wasn't present in Solasta 2. Moving on, enemy AI was a bit wonky at some points during the demo, but that's to be expected. It's pre-alpha, it's a demo, I get it. Also, there was, as far as combat is concerned, there's a new preview button towards, I think, the bottom right. During the demo, you know, it was essentially what I think it does. What I think it's supposed to do is it's a button that while the enemy characters are moving, you hop to your character's view, and then you can like plan your turn as the enemy is making theirs. So you're not locked to just being in the enemy's view during their turn. You can kind of hop to your character, check out, you know, their movement area. I don't know if you can like plan out full actions and everything. I'm not sure I don't know the full extent of it, but it's there and I'm excited to see how it ends up being fleshed out. AoE targeting has gotten much smoother when compared to the previous game. Small thing, but it is still nice to see. I'm pretty sure that the original Solasta had like dynamic camera zoom-ins at certain points in combat. I'm pretty sure that was in the game. Like you'd get a camera close-up in this cool action shot of your character doing something from time to time in that first game, and I didn't see that implemented here for the demo of this sequel. So I hope that the dynamic camera stuff does make it into this game's combat, as it was something I liked about the first one for sure. I would like for weapon combat in general to feel more weighty and punchy, or just for combat in general, for combat overall. I think that would be nice. Like there are some spells that do have a nice chunky amount of impact, like Shatter, and Burning Hands felt appropriately, I don't know, like, how would you describe it? Like hissy, I guess, for like a fire spell. It feels how a cone of fire is supposed to feel, okay? I don't know how to describe it, but in general, I do think weapons, both ranged and melee, as well as cantrips and some spells overall, could have a bit more oomph to them, you know? That was the same in the first game, so I would like to see that improve here for Solasta 2. Some of them were fine. There were some cantrips like Sacred Flame that felt good, felt like an improvement from the original, but overall, in that aspect, oomph-wise for combat, it could be improved. This demo introduces corrupted versions of that Sickless race I told you about, and they're called the Kavuli, I think is how you pronounce it, and there's even corrupted kobolds, so maybe we could see some corrupted versions of other creatures, races, or what have you. And if those things, like the corrupted races and whatnot, and the Kavuli in general and stuff, are going to be one of the prominent enemy types that we fight in this game, I think that's good. I think those enemies were cool looking, and they did, at least for the most part, for some of them, they looked cooler than some of the Soraks from the previous game. Although I'm not sure if, like, from a story standpoint, if they're more interesting, because we don't know a whole lot about them. I'm gonna have to find out more about them to give my full thoughts on that. But in general, looks wise, I enjoyed what appears to be one of the main enemy types that we're gonna be fighting. The main villainess, called Shadwin, introduced in the trailer, and I guess spoiler alert, I'm not going to show it, I don't think, maybe, we'll see, but just at the end of the final fight here in this trailer, that villainess looks great. They're voiced just so dang well. I love their voice. It appropriately set the chills and conveyed the feelings it's supposed to, and overall, Shadwin is definitely intimidating, as she should be, and I'm really excited to learn more about the character. The last fight in this demo was pretty tough. It took multiple tries, although to be fair, the pre-made party members that the demo provides you, they're kind of trash. Like, not a bad party, I wouldn't say, but not a great one by any means. And I'm saying that as someone who is not a min-maxer. I'm always going for like flavor or the feel of a given character I'm making. And even still, I looked at this party and played with them. I'm like, yo, they're not that good, okay? There's also some great little visual touches that showcase the devs truly wanting to make the game special and feeling like a video game version of a beloved tabletop RPG. Dice are everywhere in Solasta to remind you of this game's roots, essentially. And an improvement in this sequel is that there's a little dice tray off to the side that appears in place of your character portrait whenever they make a roll in combat. And of course, just like BG3, Baldur's Gate 3, you get to see dice physically roll in dialogue whenever a party member makes a skill check. Although they could slow that roll down just a bit, like just a little bit, just a hair. That roll happens just a little bit too fast. One thing I do really want to see from this game at launch is the inclusion of the Warlock class from the get-go. For the original Solasta Crown of the Magister, all of the base D&D classes were not in the game at launch. Instead, initially, there was like, I want to say, I don't even remember, like 6 to 8 of the classes available. I want to say, again, I can't exactly remember, and the rest were eventually added as paid DLC, so you did at some point have all 12 classes. And it wasn't like 1 month after the release type of paid DLC like Civilization 7. No, it took a while for all these classes to come out. So yes, the dev team was working on them diligently post-release, and it wasn't a greedy move in my opinion. And if you were playing the game multiplayer with friends, only one person, I believe the host, but maybe it could have been anybody, needed to have the DLC classes and DLC in general in order for everyone else to access them and make characters with those classes. So it's not like everyone even needed to all buy this stuff. It's something I consider pretty generous, given the fact that Tactical Adventures isn't a huge dev team. Now, with all that said, I believe that's, to be the plan for Solasta 2 as well. I'm not sure, I think I read something on it, and I don't think all of the classes are going to be available at launch. And I just really hope that Warlock is included in the launch lineup this time around, as for the first game, Warlock was one of the last classes to get released. And come on, I mean, it's a huge fan favorite. I mean, it's my favorite, but still, like it's mine and many others' favorite. Have Warlock playable from the get-go. I only bring this up as in the demo, you get a preset party of characters and you can't make your own characters, so it's unsure at this point if Warlock or even what classes outside of the ones we see in this demo will be present at launch. There's like no druid, no monk, and a few others, so we really don't know. One thing the demo doesn't showcase, but that I'd like to see, is more variation for the equipment. In the original game, a lot of the gear you could find looked kind of samey, and just in general, I would like some more variation and options in terms of armor and weapon appearances for my character. Also, I know it's not a Dungeons and Dragons thing, but please, a transmog system would be amazing in this game. I've been playing a lot of RPGs lately that have it, like, I've been playing Avowed a ton lately. It has a transmog system, and I just enjoy RPGs so much more that do include it. So please, transmog system. I know it might clash with what the dev's vision is, but optional, please, maybe. Fingers crossed. Performance wasn't the best considering the specs of my rig. My computer, my gaming PC, should be able to run a game like this, no problem. But there were some performance hiccups, frame dip, some jittering, some frame time issues and drops and stuff like that. But hey, it's pre-alpha. A lot of optimization just isn't expected at this point. They're worried about more big picture stuffs and stuff like that will come along as the game is being developed further. So not a big deal, but just, hey, even if you got a great computer, if you're gonna try this demo, just don't be surprised by that kind of stuff is all. I will say though, as is, even with the map and mini map, it can be quite hard to figure out where to go sometimes. Not a huge complaint for me, as I'm not someone who minds getting just a little bit lost in an RPG. Hey, just for a few minutes occasionally, it's not a big deal for me, but still it's something to consider. Just for a few minutes, for the life of me, I couldn't figure out where to go. So hey, just some feedback if the devs ever watch this video. In terms of bugs outside of wonky AI, there were some things I noticed, like when ambushing a group of enemies, if you were trying to target your allies with a friendly spell, like a buff spell such as Blessed, you couldn't target them as your allies were listed under the status of not sensed due to the ongoing surprise against the enemies. So your enemies couldn't sense them, but it was also treating it as if you as a party member, as an ally, could also not sense them. And my sorcerer, the sorcerer in the group, he was just able to infinitely cast shield on himself even when he had no spell slots left. So just a few things. I'm sure there's some more bugs, none that really I encountered, but I'm sure there are some more. Again, pre-alpha demo, not a big deal, right? Solasta 1 did have a built-in campaign / dungeon maker. So the game was kind of, I wouldn't say infinitely replayable, but damn near close to, right? Since there was just so many extra campaigns that were out there, which were made and shared by the community. There were full-on fan recreations of popular D&D modules like Lost Mines of Vandelver. Now, I haven't seen any mention of that same campaign or dungeon maker being planned for Solasta 2, but after playing the demo and it just being this amazing product, I really hope the sequel does have one. So yeah, that's everything of note that I took from my time with this Solasta 2 demo. It's shaping up to be a great game so far. Overall, this demo has me very hyped up for the early access as well as full release of Solasta 2, and it confirms that we live in such a great time to be an RPG fan in terms of fantastic titles to get our hands on. I can clearly tell that the dev team behind this game, Tactical Adventures, is taking a lot of feedback from the previous title to heart. But not only that, it seems like they're working diligently to create the kind of game they would want to play, an RPG game for RPG lovers. Also, in some ways, this kind of feels like the game they wanted to make the first time around, with more resources at their disposal for this one when compared to the first game. Regardless, I wish them the best of luck with this title. Take all the time you need to get it done. Don't rush it, and get it done right, as I'm sure you're expecting to do. We will be patient, I promise you. And thank you for putting out the demo for all of us to get a peek at, of this game. Really appreciate that. I'm not in contact with the devs or anything like that, but I just still wanted to express their thanks, because this is super early on and they did not need to show us the game like this, but the fact that they did shows that they have confidence in their work, and from what I played, they should. So, how do you think Solasta 2 looks so far based on the trailers as well as what I've showed you and talked about here? Did you play the demo yourself? If so, be sure to let me know what your thoughts are on it as well. As always, I'm Instora. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Be easy.